Hi there, this is Helen Tarrant again from here with our whole team. Wow, it's massive. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and one of the things that I'm actually going to share with you today is actually one of the videos that we did through the boot camp we just had on the Sunday, right? And one of the reasons I want to actually share this one with you is it's a longer video, it's about 35 minutes or so, is that we're going to cover off due diligence time bombs, right? People don't realize the kind of things that might come up in due diligence, and they think it's all run-of-the-mill stuff, and this is why I want to share with you. So this is just a quick snapshot of maybe 5 to 6 to 7 properties we've looked at, and what kind of due diligence, what are things that popped up that didn't show us, they've neglected to show us, they try to hide, and so just a quick breakdown of what it is, where it is, and what we found. So I want to share that with you, and it's really important because it gives you insight of what we do every day, but most importantly it shows you what you are not finding in your files or what you should be looking for. So this is conducted by one of our team, Jerry, and of course this is part of our boot camp, so you'll see Stephen speaking and working through with Jerry because Stephen does the building side of the business.
So anybody who doesn't know, this is Jerry, from the French meaning Jerry. Jerry is our DD extraordinaire. And has been with us for a bit over a year and has done in excess of 100 files that he's looked through on, which puts it in at well over probably 150, $180 million worth of property that he's had to look through every single file, pick through all of the I think what we're going to call them today is bombshells or hidden time bombs, because
bombshells, that's what we
I mean, you came up with that great name, so you've got to live up to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And anybody who's ever read an information memorandum knows two things. Normally they're done by someone who isn't paying as much attention to the file as they possibly could be.
That's a very polite way.
Is there anybody online here who does who does put the IMs together? Anybody here from an agent who puts IMs who's prepared to stick their hand up?
Oh, that's a bit harsh.
No. All right. Because I don't want to get beaten up.
Yeah.
Right. Most information memorandums we find have mistakes in them, and they're anywhere between, oops, that was out by a little bit, to, is this the right property?
Yeah. So, we've actually been there. We've been there to a property, and Steve and I are going, well, on the IM it says there's 2 car spaces. Can you show us where the car space is? There's no car spaces with this property. And we walked around the building going, are you sure?
Yeah.
Where is the car spaces? And the agent's like, oh, it's my first day. And they can't find it.
We asked the guy outside, actually, who was, and he said, what are you talking about? None of these places have got car parks.
That was in Melbourne. Yes. Yeah. That was a fun spot.
That was interesting. And then to the vendor not even knowing whether he has the tenant's paying net rent or gross rent. Because sometimes when you have one too many properties, it's just really hard to keep track whether your tenant's paying net rent or gross rent.
Absolutely.
And see these things, and so many and varied. We have seen lots and lots of tenants, that do all sorts of things. Someone who says,
For the sake of political correctness, we will assume that it is natural. People are human. People make errors. That's why pencils have erasers. Right, let's say that is the polite version. Some of them are so freaking wrong that either whoever did it was hungover from the night before or trying to hide something, and that's about as impolite as I'm going to be on a public forum.
Yeah. So I mean, the whole point of DD is to find things that people don't notice, to pick up things, and as a team we see things differently, and so working through it. So Jerry's picked a handful,
half dozen of them,
of interesting property we've come across with interesting things that's popped up during DD that was not disclosed, wasn't shown to us, or just oversight on the agent's part. Vendor didn't have any clue that it was there, and the lease didn't really specify anything regarding that matter, or something like, just wasn't aware that the tenant had changed and you know.
There was one a couple of weeks ago where we were trying to sort out an insurance quote for it, and the vendor's insurance was incredibly low, and we were trying to work out how that had happened. Turns out that between when they first got the insurance and a couple of years later, there had been something like 6 or 7 different tenants moving in and out, all of them having different risk profiles, and the same insurance had just been kept constant the entire time. And James was talking about this quite a bit earlier on, where he was saying, look, you know, it all depends on the risk profile, and it's really important to keep that risk profile updated.
Record. Let's just check we're recording.
We are recording.
Excellent.
Beautiful.
All right. Well, I'll leave it to you.
All right.
Show us the due diligence bombshells.
Now, are you logging in or what?
I am logged in. I'm in the webinar again here. I don't have a share screen option.
All right. Sorry, guys. 30 seconds. We will promote to panelist.
Join as panelist.
Which will take a second or two. There it is, and I will make you.
Okey-doke.
All right, there you go.
So can everybody see that there?
Yep.
Thumbs up. Right on. Okay, I do have to start this off by saying that this is general information. You know, it's not financial advice. I've tried to keep it as general as I can while still using actual deals. So some of the numbers, you know, the rounding, we've just got to make sure that we're not giving out too much individual information. And yeah, I just need to get that out of the way first off.
Long story short, this is to give you an idea of things that can go wrong, not exact. Every deal is different, but it's to give you a feel of the sort of stuff that you can find if you dig hard enough.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, go for it.
All right, to start off with, we're jumping up to Townsville. So we've got 167 Charters Towers Road, and we've got rent of $76,000 plus GST per annum. You know, 3-year lease, CPI increases. It's a net lease, so the tenant's paying all of the outgoings for $985,000. On the surface, it looks really good, right? So we have we've got an old post office. It's a leaseback. So we've got, you know, all the information we need from that there, just to make sure that the tenant is actually able to pay the rent going forwards. Now, when we looked at this on Stephen's favorite program, Nearmap,
yes,
we can get satellite pictures of real time and over the past, and it looked quite good from there. So it turns out that in the building and pest, there was a little bit of rust that showed through on the roof, and we thought, okay, that's, you know, reasonable. 80%, 90%, 95% of commercial roofs just aren't what they should be. Although it had turned out that this vendor had painted the roof a couple of years ago, and now the rust was starting to shine through it. So on the satellite pictures, the entire roof looked white. It was looking beautiful. But then when we actually got a roofer up there just to double check, he he came back with an initial quote of around $140,000, and we thought that's outrageous for the square meterage on the roof there. That was incredible. It turns out that even though it was a solid building, the roof itself was horizontal, just completely flat. And there was a bit of back and forth with the vendor and the agent about that, where they got their guy up there and said, hey, look, it's not too flat, that's fine. We can, you know, put some money towards it. I think the initial was about 35.
Yep.
Eventually they got a quote and said 60, so we thought, all right, in Townsville you have to have it at least a 1 degree pitch to put clip lock on.
It's not just in Townsville, it's anywhere. A bare minimum pitch is 1 degree. And the problem with that is there's only one product that will even work at that. That's clip lock. Anything else, you'll have water leaks, and even clip lock at 1 degree is dangerous, right? That's when you're going to have water. If you've got 1 degree of fall and the wind's blowing this way, the water's going to run uphill. Right?
Absolutely.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So 1 degree is not ideal. It's a bare minimum, but
well, as we've seen, it is actually rusting quite a bit through. We've got our guy saying the roof's too flat, their guy saying the roof's not too flat, and again, you know, council's not too much a fan of rooftop pools, so we got our guy up there with a digital level, and it's showing at 0.2 degrees there. So I think, you know, with a whole bunch more photos just like this, we were able to convince them that indeed it is too flat, and that we needed to get a new roof. And furthermore, if they tried to put it in, then we'd also need to get them to pay for the council approval. So that was a really important sticking point there. If they had put it originally, they would have just put a new roof in, too flat, and then council would have said no, tear it off, and then our client would have been up for, well, quite a bit more.
Well, they would have been up to yeet the old one and then replace it with the $140,000 job that we were quoted in the first place. Because the price in the first place was quoted to increase the pitch so that it went to at least one degree. And then once it did that, then at least the thing is certified, right? You cannot, and this was the problem that we had, where we were going to get the quote was originally we'll just replace it. And we said, well, no, we want it certified.
Absolutely.
Because the problem is, if they just replaced it at 0.2 of a degree, and we'd then gone, well, down to council, can we get this certified? No, it's 0.2 degree, you can't.
Not a chance.
Take it off and redo it.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden it doesn't comply. Then our client hasn't actually got anything. Insurance probably wouldn't cover it. And, we're in a whole world of hurt.
Absolutely.
Over 0.8 of a degree.
It's, yeah.
It doesn't seem like much, but 0.8 of a degree could have cost you 160, 170 grand.
Absolutely there, yeah. Although, happy outcome. So what we actually got happen is we got the vendor to agree to replace it because, again, it's a leaseback. They knew that this issue was here, and one of the roofers we called said that they'd been asked a couple of years ago to quote on fixing this up properly. So that was just another interesting tidbit that came out there. And yeah, so we also got them to put aside money for council approval as well as the roof replacement. And yeah, everyone's happy with that one there, apart from the vendor trying to slip it past. Right, so next one we've got, this one here is over Narangba. So it's just west of Redcliffe. And yeah, so we've got $49,000 a year rent. It's an industrial strata titled building, 6 years lease term, 3% or CPI, whichever was greater for the increases, and we've got that for $705,000. Now this one, again, it's a bit of an older one. I just wanted to go back in time, so again, the numbers won't quite stack up the same way these days, especially with what Helen was talking about in the market earlier. But again, it's just more of an indication as to what had happened. So we've gone through the Strata report, that's looked good. They've got a whole bunch of money in the sinking fund, and again, just for everyone who doesn't know, that's, that's the bank account for the Strata, right? For the big repairs, roof things, rethinking a car park, or just general large capital expenses like that. Again, it's a newer building. The building itself was solid. So we decided, all right, as we do with every property, we're going to have a little bit of a look into the tenant. So now on the lease, you always have to have the tenant's ACN or ABN. Oh, that's funny. Again, this was a little while ago, and at the time of this file, they had just come out of administration, I think it was 2 weeks ago, from when we'd signed the contract. So, well, on one hand, it's good they've come out of administration, but on the other hand, why have they gone into administration?
Exactly.
So,
anybody who doesn't know what administration is, it's sort of like almost bankruptcy for a company. It means that you can't pay your bills as and when they fall due, and either you can apply for one yourself or a court will appoint an administrator, and their job is, in theory, to go in and look at the company and say, well, all right, and help you trade out of it, or help you sell some bits that you don't need to trade out of it. Now, the fact that these people actually came out of administration, which was amazing for a start, because I would say 90% of companies that go into administration never come back out, they just get liquidated. It tends to be a last resort, but in this particular instance, out they came.
yeah. So what we learned from this one here is that even though the tenant was in administration, they'd come out of it, and we'd done a bit more digging with the tenant, and we were trying to work out exactly, what had happened, why things had gone the way that they were. We actually got quite a nice letter from the tenant explaining exactly what had happened over the past couple of years for them. And they'd actually paid out their docker about 6 months ahead of schedule. So they, if they can pay that on time, ahead of time, that shows that they do have quite a solid, they are building back up to something that's profitable and something that can pay rent in the long run. And a lot of people would have just seen administration, gone, no more deal for that. But again, we were able to look into this further and understand exactly what had happened and how to fix it. As of yesterday, when I was asking about it, the tenant was still there and going strong. And yeah, it's been a good ride.
There you go.
All right, so now we've got 38 Armstrong Street in Berserker, or Berserker, depending on how you like to say things.
Depends how much it annoys you.
So now this one here, it's a lease back. There was an empty shed out the back that wasn't quite rented, so I've just put the market rent here from the valuation. So it's 151,000 plus GST. There's mixed tenancies there. 3% CPI. It depended on exactly which tenant was having the increases. They were gross leases though. We've got outs of 53, bringing in a net of 99,000. So again, it's a very, very solid building. There's a police station next door, and this has been related to government entities over the lifetime of the building. There was a bit of roof and gutter work that needed to be done, and again, as a leaseback, the tenants are normally fairly invested in ensuring the building continues in a proper manner, essentially. So they'd got that fixed up for us before settlement, and also there was some tiles and a couple of other bits and pieces that show on a building and pest. Mixed tenancies, again, we've got that empty 121 square meters, nothing to laugh about. That was, a opportunity for a bit more rent to come out of it. When we were getting on the contract, we saw that it was on the Environmental Management Register, and that raises a couple of orange flags, not exactly red. So land on the EMR, Environmental Management Register, does not mean that it's contaminated, right? So there's the two different registers. There's the CLR, Contaminated Land Register, and then there's the EMR, Environmental Management Register. The Environmental Management Register means that in the past there has been some use that needed to be registered. It doesn't guarantee contamination, although it shows that there's something there that we do need to get checked out.
Examples of EMR could be fuel storage, oil storage, a company that used to do repairs on cars, or in one that we saw recently, storage of explosives.
Yeah, that was
that was new.
Yeah. Well, it saves on demolition costs if anything goes wrong though, right?
Yeah, sadly they'd already gone. I wanted to do a deal, but never mind.
Look, so as with any responsible lender, the lender that this client chose to use won't go ahead with this without a contamination report. Just like Tyler was saying earlier on.
He had a limited title.
Exactly, right? So that if there's something wrong with it, or they can't quite see the bigger picture, then they're not going to lend on it. So what we ended up doing is we ended up getting an environmental report for it, and it was a couple of grand, but we actually ended up splitting that cost with the vendor just to try and get it all over the line. And afterwards, no contamination showed, and it was all green fields.
There we go.
All right, so now we've got this one here. This one. Oh
yeah, that was amusing.
So this is shop 1 2623 to 2633 in Gold Coast Highway, and it's just that. I'm not sure if you can see the mouse there, but it's just that Thai restaurant at the end of it there, right? So they got a 5 years lease term with 4% increases. It's a gross lease, and we were told the outgoings were 18,867. Net. Using that, 38,333. Jump ahead, and again, something doesn't quite add up here. So we have what's given on the IM, like Stephen and Helen was saying earlier. There's
there can be errors.
Yes, emissions, unintentional, intentional. Sometimes it's hard to quite tell. So you can see that there is a bit of a jump in the body corporate levies, especially. And also the water rates, so they charged it 3 times per year instead of the amount of times 4 times per year, and the 24 cents I put in just to really highlight that. Anyway, so that brings down the yield substantially, right?
24 cents. Oh, Jesus, you need help.
A couple of years computer science makes you love the numbers. Anyway, So that's brought our outs up and our net down. And the yields, again, that's down again. That doesn't include the management fees that they didn't include at all in the initial outgoing schedule they gave us. So with all of this included, we've lost 0.9% on the yield. Couple that with the fact that the admin fund was in significant deficit and the sinking fund was not as high as it should be for a building of that type. There's also been a bit of a swing up and down, and mostly up lately, on the administration and the sinking fund. So now on the administration fund for a net lease, that doesn't matter so much, because a lot of times you'll be getting the tenant to pay for the administration fund, and the sinking fund, as its capital works, that's going to be paid normally by the landlord, although there are exceptions, because commercial is a world of exceptions. The only problem is that this was a gross lease, so if the admin and sinking fund are both rising substantially over the last few years, like we can see here, that doesn't bode well for the landlord, right? There's also a sinking fund forecast that all stratas are required to have, and that outlines roughly what they need over the next 10 to 15 years.
It's like preventative maintenance on the building and upgrades and things. So
Exactly, yeah. They were not close to where they should have been according to their own sinking fund forecast. So this one here, we were out, and we were out quickly. Honestly, I double checked just to make sure, but this was less than a week later. So we'd signed the contract, and less than a week later, we already told the agent, look, unless you can move it all, we're out. And they basically said, we're not moving, and so we said, we are. Off we go.
bye.
Exactly.
Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. Look,
Oops, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just a quick update, a quick overview on sinking funds, very quickly. Administrative fund in a strata is like the day-to-day expenses, insurance, power, water rates, mowing the lawn, little repairs and maintenance. The sinking fund is designed to, I call it the credit card for the building. So it's like a whole thwack of money that's saved up. And then what they do is they say, all right, over the next 10 years, we think we're going to need to, repair some cracks in the concrete in this year, and then we have to repaint it at year 5, and then by year 10, we're going to have to refix the swimming pool or something like that. And they say, all right, it's going to cost us $1 million over that period of time. So we'll put in $100,000 per annum, and that'll cover the maintenance costs.
Yeah.
Right.
So then we'll jump down again.
Overly simplified.
Yeah. General information, right?
Overly simplified. Yes.
So we've got 116 Somerville Road in Yarraville. So now this one here, the rent is $51,700. 3 years lease term that they've actually just taken up. So we were at the start of the term. CPI increase, and this was a net lease, as described by the marketing material. And then we had outs of $10,291 and a net from that of $49,762. This is the marketing material from the agent's website, and we can see here securely leased again. So this has just recently been taken up, that 3-year option period. Current rental $51,700 per annum plus outgoings.
Right.
That looks pretty good to me, doesn't it, Stephen?
Yep.
All right. The only trouble was that the outs don't include the management fees, right? And assuming 4.4%, there's a bit of swing up and down. I've seen up to 7% for a couple of them, plus GST. Yep. Land tax is payable because, depending on exactly how it's held, this particular case it was trust holding, and that can invite extra fees. You get a lower threshold before you have to start paying the land tax on it. So I think it's $25,000 instead of, for 2022 financial year, it's $300,000 in Victoria. There was also a couple of concerns with the strata. They weren't major, and I'm sure they would have been resolved if we'd had a chance to talk with them more. Although I did have a look at the rent, and I saw $51,700 per annum. Stephen, do you see that something's missing there?
GST?
Bingo. So what had happened was the rent was GST inclusive. So what does that mean, Stephen?
Well, it means we're out by 1/11th.
That's the one. So if we take $51,700 divided by 1.1, we've got $47,000 rent.
All right. Now, can you bring the microphone closer to you? People are saying you're too quiet.
Beg your pardon. Is that better there?
And for everybody who just heard Jerry was wearing headphones while Jerry dragged the microphone across the desk and is currently deaf, sorry.
I apologise. This isn't exactly a deal breaker straight away, right? Because the threshold for registering for GST, for for-profit enterprises at least, is 75,000. Not-for-profits like some Stratas is 150,000. Talk to your own tax advisors to see if it's right for you, etc. But that's not exactly a deal breaker straight away. The only problem is that putting all this together, we started at a 5.91% yield, and we've ended up with under 5%. So again, we've got that 0.9, or almost a whole percent actually.
It's nearly 1% different, right?
Which is, it doesn't work, right?
No.
And yeah, again, out and out quickly, right? This was less than a week, again, from when we'd first signed the contract. We'd had a talk with everyone. We asked them, look, these are the numbers right here. This is what's going to change. You know, you need to move or we need to move, right? And again, they weren't willing to move from this, so we had to. And yeah, that was... Right. It was a solid tenant, yeah.
Yeah, and look, it's a 1% over that is a 16% variation in profit, right? And that's just too much to lose. It's not happening.
Look, net rental, you've gone from 51 to 43. That's crazy. This one here,
there's almost resi numbers there, except it's still cash flow positive.
Well, fun fact, there was actually resi above it, so we might have been better off trying to get one of those instead. Anyway, now we've got actually one of my personal favourites. This is 240 Plenty Road in Bandura. So there was a couple of things with this one here, right? So we've got 48 grand plus GST for the rent. 5 years lease term for a fertility clinic in there, 3% increases, net lease 800,000 for it. It's a beautiful building, but do you see these little panels just on the side here, Stephen?
Yes.
They look awfully familiar.
Yes, I love a little bit of paneling.
Especially when it's ACP, right? So
it stands for?
Aluminium composite paneling.
Yep.
So what's happened is that the Strata is run very well, right? I've talked to the Strata manager on numerous occasions, and he was very quick to respond. It was really well run, right? They were so on top of it. The cladding on the outside, that's the flammable cladding that I've talked about at length at least
twice.
At least twice now, yeah. Essentially what it is, it's aluminium on the outside and essentially milk bottle plastic on the inside, which is highly flammable. And aluminium, when it starts to melt, that's half a thermite right there. So it's not a good combination to put on the outside, especially when they all started selling it and calling it fireproof.
And you guys didn't think you were going to learn any science today.
Yeah, so look, they'd already gotten quotes to remove it, and it turned out to be around $1 million to get all of the ACP off the building. They'd already started, they'd taken some samples, they'd taken some of the panels off to really get a better understanding of how it was attached and what they can replace it with. Again, the Strata manager, props to him, he was very upfront about all of this and sent me all the information that I required, and it was really well documented in all those Strata documents. The trouble was that with this $1 million for a Strata, it's a big building, but it's not big enough to have all of that on hand at the sinking fund. So they had to get financing for it, and it turned out that the owner, by not saying anything at the time, had chosen to, over the next 10 years, pay a set amount for a special levy, which ended up being, quite a substantial...
$72,000.
Yeah, quite a substantial amount per year. So what we ended up doing was we told the vendor, look, we've seen this coming up. This is coming up. Let's work this out. And, if they'd chosen to pay it up front, then they would have saved a bit, but they hadn't. So, yeah, we got them to actually agree to pay for that future levy. And, yeah, it's worked out very well for them.
It was a great deal.
Look, I feel like I've tried to drop these bombshells as quick as I can. Did you guys need a second to digest any of that, or any questions for any of these ones?
I think you've fried a few people's brains. Carry on.
Look, so that was my last one there. I wanted to end it on a happy note. All is well. We've got a really good looking building with some works underway. That special levy is being paid for by the seller for it, because again, they knew it was coming up, and they did drag their feet a little bit for it.
All right.
Uh,
Now, we're going to talk about my favourite property, Woodman Court.
Woodman Court.
And you're going to... I'm going to
Unshare me.
Yes, can you unpin you?
Stop share there.
There we go. All right. So, some of you know, we looked at doing a group deal up in Townsville in a place called Woodman Court. It used to be a Better Electrical and a whole plethora of other bits and pieces. At one stage, it was Joyce Main. Now, this is a big project, right? This is a $12 million deal, and we don't expect most of you guys to do that. But again, you divide the numbers by 10, it becomes numbers that I can relate to anyway. You know, $1.2 million property, a lot of us can afford. A $12 million property, yeah, we're in rarefied atmosphere, right? So the deal with this was there was a building at the front that had a COVID jabbing clinic in. There was another building on the side that had a Dulux paint centre, dance studio, fitness thingy, and something else. Doesn't matter. And there was a vacant shed down the back which has now got a gym in it. Now, where this building became interesting, and there is the near map view of it. Anybody who doesn't know what near map is, this is it.
Google Maps, but better.
Yeah, it's Google Maps, but it's updated. You can see all these little dots at the top. They're when the photos have been upgraded. So that one was August 19, February 19, and then we go back in time, right? Now, this building was based over around about 30,000 square metres, right? So it goes all the way up here, down there, this building, and the whole lot. Now, there are a couple of things in here that irked me when I saw them, and I thought, I don't like that. Now, why am I zooming in on the Dulux sign? Let's go a little bit further forwards in time. There we go.
What's that?
Notice there's a crack in the concrete.
Oh, no.
They filled it with a little bit of bitumen. Still there. Then if we jump to roughly today, right, there's another one there. Now, I have a theory about cracks in concrete, and I'll give you the G-rated version. But if you can stick the edge of a business card in it, you paint it and patch it. If you can stick your fingers in it, yeah, that's getting towards the time when you need an engineer. And if you can fit your whole fist into it, run. Okay? So, when you can see them from photos taken out of an aeroplane flying over, I think that's a little bit, I think we're starting to talk about this bit. Now, what we're going to do is just have a peek down the bottom here, because they're even more significant. Right? And you can see all of these cracks along here. Right, and on that side, I'm going to go to a different photo because it's... there we go.
Is this showing on the share screen still?
Oh. Wait a minute. What happened there? Turns out, let me just do that last little bit again, shall we? Alright, we can all see that now? Got it? Beautiful. Alright, so very quickly. Okay. And forgive me for not, I thought I pressed the button, I clearly hadn't. Okay, there we go. So, what this property takes into account, all of this bit, all the way around here, all the way up there and back up, right? So it's 30,000 square metres of property and 12,000 square metres of building. Now, when we look in here near the Dulux part, right, you can see that lump there. That's a crack in the concrete that's roughly, you know, yay wide and 2 metres long. And then we go down to the bottom here. You can see cracks all the way through here. Right. Cracks through there. All the way through here, right? Now, when you can see a crack from a photo taken from an aeroplane, that gives you a pretty good indication that this is heading towards some kind of catastrophe. Now, it turns out what happened with this building is the building was built on a hill and then it disappeared down to a river. So it was all done on filled ground. It was about 8 metres, so 24 feet in the old language of filled dirt. Now, underneath the buildings, they put columns all the way down to something hard. But they hadn't done that in the car park. And 20 years later, with the area flooding, now it hasn't actually flooded, it hasn't actually gone underwater, but the water in the creeks raised and lowered, ultimately reduced the strength of the substrata, and all of a sudden all of the concrete, particularly the driveway on the end of it, has just started to crack on one edge. So there was something like 8,000 or 9,000 square metres of concrete there, and I got an engineer to go out and looked at it, and he rang me and I said, and I won't tell you exactly what I said, but basically I said, it's as bad as I think, and he said, it's worse. I said, how much of this needs to be replaced? And he says, 3,000 square metres of it now, ultimately all of it. So that's $1.3, $1.4 million. Okay. Ugh. The next thing we looked at was all the air conditioners, because in a building like this, there is air conditioning everywhere. Now, this building itself was actually quite surprising how good it was. But you can just look at it on this building, right? Air conditioning there, air conditioning here, air conditioning there. There's 2 more there, and a big thing over there. Now, they are what's known as package units. They're ginormous industrial air conditioners. And to replace them, we worked out would be somewhere between $1.4 and $1.5 million over the next 10 years. Air conditioners run 15 years quite well, 20 years is at the end of it, and anything you get over 20 years is borrowed time. Right, in this particular case, we're at 20 years. So all of the air conditioning in all 10 or 11,000 or 12,000 square metres of building was on borrowed time. So we knew that that had to be replaced.
Absolutely.
So that's $2.5 to $3 million worth of capital expenses we've got coming up on a $12 million building. Right? That's a lot of money. And that was going to soak up potentially, so let's call it $3 million. Right, this thing was only earning about $800,000, $900,000 per year rent. So that could have been 4 years, 5 years rent gone just upgrading it. We went, no, we're not taking the risk.
Not a chance. You can't do that thing. I mean,
it's just crazy.
Stephen said this one to me before as well, but he's if an air conditioner is old enough to drink, just like a kid, that's when the trouble really starts. So
that sounds like me. So yeah, once you get to a certain age, it's going to go bad.
So, how was that? That was a bit of a marathon, wasn't it? It feels like, there's so much to look out for, but, at the end of the day in commercial property, you don't know what you don't know. And it's the things that you don't know, and it's the things that you forget to look or forget to check or forget to even ask the question that ends up being ticking time bombs that end up cost you tens of thousands of dollars. Now, I've got clients who forgot to ask about aircon, which had to replace and spend $20,000. I've got clients who forgot to, ask about doors or roller doors or things that don't work, or carpets or leaks or things like that ends up costing a lot of money. So this is to make you aware that these are some of the things that we just do in the background for our clients, but also just the things that we actually look out for, and look for things that even when people don't point them out or don't show it, isn't that obvious, and we talk through it. Right? So this is all about finding you and getting you the best deal. So again, if this is something you want someone to help you, handhold you, want someone to be there with you, look for the time bombs, look for things that's not right, and tell you what you should be looking for, then do reach out to us, helentarrant.com. Send me an email. Don't forget to subscribe, and also leave us a comment about anything else you want us to know about due diligence. And also, just if there's anything anywhere that you think it's a little bit odd and you want us to check it out, don't forget to reach out to us. But it's also about having that strategy. And the reason we pull some of our clients out of deals, we know that as we go through the DD, that property is not going to stack up the way they want for the future. Rather than going through it, it's better to sacrifice some money and make sure that that's not the right deal for you and that doesn't stop you from buying to the future, then then to say I have to go down the path of going through this deal because I've spent $5,000 on valuation, I've spent $2,000 on due diligence, now I must go through it. Well, it's better to sometimes sacrifice that 7 or whatever the amount is than to go through a deal and end up being a dud and not being able to move forward, right? So it's all about that. Don't forget, if you want someone to work with you, someone to be in your corner, reach out to us, helentarrant.com, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.